Unfortunately, I can't figure out how to remove the thumbnail from my YouTube live broadcast, and so they're getting the stare at maps with friends thumbnail instead of a no thumbnail. Probably a little confusing for folks over there, but that is a-okay. Before we get into the meat of it, I want to say a couple quick things. Number one, Game Urchin, thank you very much for the resubscription at Tier 2. Thanks for saying you want to get it out of the way so as not to be disruptive. I'll tell you straight away that today I muted all of the pop-ups. There'll still be the visual element, but there will not be the ridiculous sounds that I brought back yesterday. So we will have the sounds returning next week, but I think for this stream in particular, having like major audio disruptions would perhaps change the vibe of what we're up to. So there is that. Number two, we'll see how long this goes. I'm hoping it goes well and that I enjoy myself and you all enjoy yourself too. I put together 20-some slides. We don't need to do all of them. We might do all of them. You know, we'll see how the vibe goes throughout. I did some pacing tests earlier today. It seems like a couple hours, but I'm not sure on that exactly. And I think it's gonna be harder for me to stay live while doing this material than normal gaming, just because it's a lot of thinking in a way that is not exactly conducive to staying focused and on for a long time. But, you know, who knows. Also, I mentioned a PowerPoint, right? I mentioned a PowerPoint and, oh, that looks terrible. I did not think about the overlap between the pop-up there and the background. Oh, I apologize, WireSpeed. Thank you for the very good and very generous resubscription. We thank you for the joke also. We'll be getting to Descartes a little later today, but WireSpeed, thank you for the 28 months subscribing. Let me say directly though, I never use PowerPoints. Never, ever, ever. So the PowerPoints you're gonna see are really bare bones. They're not impressive kinds of things. They're primarily white on black, because that's all I need for what I want to do. I did put in some pictures so you can enjoy the pictures. I hope that's a nice thing for you. But yeah, there's not going to be anything like swooping in, no fancy transitions or embedded videos. Maybe down the line, we'll do that, but for today we're just dealing with text and a couple little images for the moment. Cortraption, it's good seeing you. Cortraption, the last portion of today's stream, which I'm guessing you'll catch on the VOD, is something that you asked me to do. So it is the case that majority of today's stream is chosen based on things I can identify as being really important to my own personal development as a thinker and a person and so on. But the third section is something that Cortraption's been asking me to talk about for years and years and years, and so I told her I would do so. It's something that has mattered to my particular take on the world also. But yeah, you'll see there's a command for the chat, !ask. ASK. If you do that, it should bring up a Google form where if you want to submit anything for me to talk about either here or in the future, feel free to do so at your discretion. But I guess I'll go ahead and get into it. Don't want to waste too much time with me jibber-jabbering along. And let me say, of course, if this is not your bag, not your thing, we'll be back to gaming on Monday with Baldur's Gate 3 returning to us. The first thing to say is the title there, 3 Moments in an Adventure of Ideas. The idea of an adventure of ideas is from an American British philosopher named Alfred North Whitehead. He refers to the study of philosophy as adventures in ideas. And I've always found that so unbelievably charming, because there's a way of thinking of ideas as being these abstract, floaty kinds of things, and sitting down to do one's studies is the most boring, mind-numbing, soul-deadening kind of enterprise. But Whitehead has this sense that if you are willing to approach ideas in the right way and see why they matter and where they've come from and what the consequences can be, it can be as adventurous as going around the world and stopping and seeing the safari and seeing the mountains and all the rest. But it requires a kind of openness on the part of the studier and the teacher as well, I guess student and teacher as well. So I've always loved that phrase. As far as the 3 moments go, today I tried to figure out what I should teach about, and I realized that the most self-interested way is the way to go. Namely, I'm teaching about me today, or at least a few things that mattered in my own adventure of ideas so far. And I've been teaching now for a very, very long time, studying for even longer, so I could have chosen hundreds, if not thousands, of different ideas to discuss. These are just a few that came to mind first as being appropriate for a stream like this one. If this goes well on future streams, we will do more specific topics. Some of you joked about not seeing the reading. It's possible on future streams I could encourage you to read a short paragraph maybe for us to take up as a focus topic instead of whatever comes to mind. Okay, I would now like to yes, set up some expectations and rules. Welcome to the syllabus, I suppose. Number one, this is not a formal lecture. I do not have everything worked out in terms of, what exactly I'm going to say. I don't have any notes on hand. I have not prepared every sentence in every way. So you will see some uncertainty. You will see some hemming and hawing. It's possible that questions will come up I won't have great answers to. Which also means that we're able to, have a little bit of fun back and forth and engage with ideas, hopefully in a way that are, is enlivening to us as opposed to me simply saying, here is the state of the world today. If you want formal lectures in the future, maybe we can do that one, but we'll see. Ben Seraph, good seeing you. I mean, the answer is probably not, but I don't care about getting your problems that much. We can discuss that another day. Number 2 on the list here, please be kind to one another and to me also. I don't think is a problem for the standard community, but I just want to put it out there, which is to say, occasionally when talking about big ideas, people get big feelings very, very quickly. And often there's a sense that, the right way to approach ideas is with, absolute shields up and phasers blasting and all the rest. And so, I ask that we maintain a general vibe of kindness, a general vibe of attention and care and all those things to each other. So you know this, but this is my general sense. As I often say to my students, as President Obama told us, it is the case that we can disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's an important core for this kind of thinking. And I definitely there's a place for anger in the world and justice, via that's a different topic, but justice via action. Here, though, is not exactly the way to do it. You'll repress your feelings like a healthy adult. So there is one response to literally the entire field of philosophy that says it's intellectualizing human experience is a way of avoiding the difficult parts of human experience. That kind of critique will not be accepted today. That's one for the therapy stream. Number 3, I'm not going to try to keep up with chat, simply because if I try to read and think constantly, I don't see a way to do so effectively. Yeah. Now, that said, it's possible that chat will be absolutely dead. It is possible that no one will have anything to say at all. It'll be one of those disengaged, can't we go home teacher kind of streams, or maybe one where you're just paying attention more than talking, and that's fine whichever way. But today especially, please don't feel offended if you say something and I don't see it. Really, it's not a slight on you. I hope you all chat back and forth about things that matter that you come up with, but I won't be part of that conversation in the normal way. With that said, as you see on the screen over there, there's this command I made for today, !ask. If you use that and then go to the link, you can put something in the pile of comments. I will not get to all of them, but I'll try to take them up 3 times during today's presentation. And we'll decide, or I'll decide, I guess, if we can handle them easily, respond to them well, give you some thoughts, or if we just save them for a future stream, perhaps. And if this goes well, maybe we'll do future ones. Last thing. There's a certain thread that I really appreciate in philosophy, which is called deliberative. Philosophy is best done slowly. I think it's actually the case that a lot of things in human life are best done slowly, as a way of ensuring that one hasn't cut any corners, as a way of ensuring that one is respecting the subject and respecting oneself, etc. Which is why I think that a lot of people who claim to be doing philosophy on Twitch the debate bros especially, are actually making a mockery of my field, are sincerely just trying to say pretty words in ways that convince people, and do it with such an overloading of ideas that people feel bullied into giving up. Exactly, right? This is the category of rhetoric, the category of sophism, as opposed to the category of philosophy. And so, yeah, if you ask me a question, I don't know an answer to it, I will tell you I don't know, let me think about it. In so doing, I'm not meaning to say in any measure that I think that I'm wrong necessarily. I just need time to think about the kind of thing, because these are big ideas. The ideas that we talk about when we talk about the category of philosophy are ones that people have thought about for a very, very long time. They're not reducible to a TikTok clip, in my opinion. Brickhead, good seeing you. If someone thinks an idea or question for future discussions, you put it in Ask or in Discord. For right now, Brickhead, I'd appreciate you putting it in Ask, just so I can keep all the things together. We'll see how it works, though, over the coming days and weeks. Maybe we'll have a separate Discord channel, but for right now, just use the Ask command, if you please, on that one. Okay. Is there anything else I want to say by way of throat clearing before we get to it? I don't think so. Let's see where this thing goes. So, yeah, my background. So if you've been around for long enough, you will already know this. You will already also know some of the things I'll discuss later. But yeah, my background, this is going to become therapy stream for just a very, very brief moment. I was born in a conservative Christian household. We went to church every week. We were taught there were certain absolute truths about the world, and these were truths that kind of couldn't be questioned. They could be talked about and thought about, but only with the sort of assumption that they were right all the way through. And I think that really formed the early version of me. I could ask questions, but only so far. And at the time, that felt very encouraging of confidence, right? Very, we have the answers figured out, don't worry. Only later did I begin to worry. Number two, rough home life, that will come into play in a moment. And then bullied at school. Probably a story similar to a lot of us. I was more interested in ideas than much else. I was very proud of myself for being a good student. The teachers liked me more than my peers did. And that's how it goes for a lot of us. I think it's important not to psychologize other people. You shouldn't take other people's ideas and say, oh, you only believe that because of blah, 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 even if it might be true. But I think it's important to psychologize oneself, to say, okay, is it possible I believe item X because I had experiences Y, and these beliefs are a response to it? More on that in a second. Yeah, because of the bullying, we did a lot of reading and a lot of video games. I've joked at times that books were my friends at that point. I found such a wonderful experience of how the world could be otherwise at the points where I would just fall into texts. I loved fiction books, fantasy, the Narnia texts were some of my favorite growing up. But I always loved the books, like Narnia, I guess, that pointed beyond just the story, right? Clearly Narnia is a story about a lot more than just some children exploring. Video games, I've always enjoyed a lot, though I have a feeling that when I engage with video games, or did when I was younger, it was totally in a passive mode. I wasn't learning from them in the way that I should or wanted to be learning at the time. Instead, they were a little bit more deadening. Now, that's not for me these days, but part of that's the complexity of the games at the time, back in the 1980s, right? Games at that time tended to be a lot more, just push the button to jump repeatedly, and that feels good, but it didn't intellectually challenge me. And so one thing I'm very happy to say is, in the past 2 decades or so, so many more games have found ways to challenge us, not just in terms of dexterity, but also in terms of intelligence and staring at maps and so on. So I don't think of video games as pure escapism anymore, but as a child they definitely were. Like I said, in my childhood household, serious conversations were encouraged, but within a fairly narrow frame. There were certain things that couldn't really be questioned. And if they were questioned, especially in a way that the parents didn't have answers for, one parent in particular, occasionally there would be raised voices, there would be tears, and that was, of course, very, very challenging. And so I began to think of ideas as these dangerous things. And not dangerous in an exciting way, but instead dangerous in a terrifying way. In the same way, isn't it great that the oven is able to cook our food? But if you touch the oven too many times, you might forget about the positive side and only feel that negative side. So I began to shy away from some elements of the open intellectual life in my high school years because it just felt bad. It felt like when people talk about big ideas, they get mad and they storm off and they scream. You might recall, of course, this is also the period in which talk radio began to take a turn towards like real cruelty and yelling and caller, you're an idiot, and so on. Rush Limbaugh is the kind of person who comes to mind here. And so that was sort of the intellectual environment in which I found myself in late high school. And because of that, I was just sad and disconnected and so on. So that's sort of the psychological background that gets me to the next part of the story. Quick educational mention. I have a BA from a very small school. My undergraduate school had about 1,000 students is all. In some measure smaller than some suburbs or even neighborhoods. And so because it was so small, it was possible to have really personalized relationships with professors as well as with my fellow students. And this allowed me to have people around me that wanted to talk ideas and encourage me to talk ideas. And that was so useful for me. As you see, only slight brag, I ended up triple majoring. I majored in philosophy and religion and political science. And some part of me wanted to go into graduate school in all three of them. I still think that religion is one of the most amazing things that people do. Religion is independently the truth value, the kind of thing that gets people to come together and say we care about something that is beyond us. Now, I don't mean to say that any religion or ideology is all to the good by any means, but it is the case that wow, the possibility of believing in things that one cannot see, which is useful in other ways also. It's fascinating that humans can do that. And we see it in so many cultures, in so many different historical periods, and that's amazing to me. Now, maybe that's just me, I'm not sure. As far as political science, I've always been interested in why people believe things that are strongly different from what I believe. And of course the case that the place we obviously find people disagreeing day to day is on political questions. And so when someone believes something strongly different than I do, my first thought is not, oh, you dum-dum, look how wrong you are, but instead the idea of how on earth do you believe this thing? How on earth is it the case that you hold this view that is so wrong from my perspective? What's going on here? And so I got into politics for that reason primarily. Went on, did a PhD, chose philosophy ultimately. We'll talk more about that in a second, with political theory and American thought as my focuses. I can say more about that later, but that's kind of my intellectual background in general. There you go. So the big question is, why philosophy? Out of all the fields I could have studied, why did I pick philosophy? And part of it, of course, is because of that thing that I wanted but didn't quite find myself getting at home. Because it had no math. All right, look here, you. Why philosophy? No math, thank you. You are correct about that. Because at home, there was this sense that you could ask certain questions, but once you went beyond those questions, there was fury. And so I remember my first philosophy class, the professor asked a fairly incendiary question, the kind of thing that would have gotten yelling and tears in my childhood. And a student gave an answer, and the professor said, I disagree, and then gave a reason. And the student responded, here's why I disagree with you, and gave a reason. And there were no raised voices, right? There was no moment of, even now, I breathe a sigh of relief thinking about it. There was no moment of, you are stupid. There was no moment of, how dare you ask that? It felt amazing to have that kind of openness to the world. And so, yeah, in being in that classroom, I found the self that I'd wanted to be all the way along. And eventually, when I decided to, become a philosopher, I realized that, and not be a philosopher, when I decided I want to be a philosophy teacher, I realized I wanted to help other students have that same experience, right? That same experience of, let's try to think together even about hard things. What was the question? The professor said directly, I want to advance the view that those who eat meat are engaged in immoral conduct. And I had never thought that thought before. I was a big old meat eater. I was very comfortable eating meat at that point, and it seemed offensive, right? It offended me to my soul, and the deepest parts of me. And, people disagree about this and discuss this in different ways, but that's the kind of thing that would get some yelling in some conversational circles. But for them, it was just an open conversation. Here are 3 quotations to begin with. That idea of curiosity. Aristotle tells us, quote here, "In wonder is the beginning of philosophy." Oh, wow. I didn't think of it in that way. I'm surprised. Let's look at that closer. Now, that can lead to many different kinds of inquiries. Certainly, some scientists do the same thing. That's surprising. Let's hypothesize. But the thought that I don't understand, let me not turn away or reject or be repelled by the unusual, the unknown, the different, but instead, let me look into it. It has always felt very good to me, that kind of openness. Number 2, and I've mentioned this on stream regularly, from Kant here, that 2 things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe. The more often and steadily reflect upon them, the starry heavens above me and the moral law within. Now, if we were in a normal classroom, I'd pause after this and say, hey, what does that mean to you? But we're not in a classroom, so we'll kind of just continue along. I think what Kant's pointing to here is the unknown that is so much bigger than we can possibly understand. What I love in this quotation is the return to it. It's not just the first time that you look at the overwhelming, the big, the engaging, that it matters, but every single time you go back and say, oh my goodness, there's something really going on here. For Kant, this is a religious understanding, both in terms of the created world as well as the possibility of divinity and within oneself. But even outside the religious perspective, isn't it an amazing thing that we live in a world of such boundless possibilities? And this is true not only in the giant things that Kant mentions here, but also in the very small things, right? In the everyday interaction. Deleuze has this great phrase, Derrida has this great phrase about it's a wonder that we understand each other at all. When you think about all of the subtlety and meaning and ideas that go into any utterance, it's amazing that other people pick up on those. How wondrous is human conversation? And we can take this kind of attitude, wonder, into noticing the depth and breadth of the experience or the phenomenon, and we can really work with that. And so, the kind of 5-cent version of this is the more questions we answer, the more questions we have. And I think that's something that I always want to remind myself of, especially when I've taught a certain idea more than a few times. I start thinking, I've got this thing down. I understand this thing. No questions, please. But then I return to it after a few semesters of not teaching and say, whoa, there's a lot here still. And so again, that returning to the idea and seeing how one's perspective has changed, how the thing has changed, and what new we can get out of it is a kind of human growth in philosophy that I'm a big fan of. Hopefully we have no permanent answers, or at least we're always ready to revise our answers based on what new we learn and explore. Now, some of you right now are saying, isn't that the work of science? And indeed it is, perhaps from a different perspective then. Last quotation I want to engage in my opening thought here is from a philosopher more recent than the other two, named Wilfrid Sellars. To achieve success in philosophy would be to know one's way around in that reflective way, which means that no intellectual holds are barred. The first thing is that idiomatic phrase, holds are barred, is actually a reference to wrestling, as you might know, right? There's certain ways that you can move your opponent's body to pin them or to get them to surrender, but you can't grab them in any way whatsoever. No holding them throughout the groin or something. And so I think that what Sellars is pointing to here is the sense that we should be able, ready, and willing to ask the questions that maybe don't come to mind right away, maybe feel uncomfortable, but by asking them and working through them and approaching them, we can probably get something of value. Now, that first part, of course, of to achieve success in philosophy does not mean that's an achievable goal, but it might be an inspiring moment to keep thinking, keep asking, to open up the world consistently. And yeah, I like the idea of a striving understanding of intellectual inquiry as opposed to an approach that says we must figure everything out and then ask no more questions, right? Get the edifice finished, put on the capstone block, and let the building stand forever. All right, there we go. I give you some introductory comments, some introductory quotations. I now want to say a little bit more here about why philosophy, and it's about the particular way when, at our best, we approach other people's arguments. Here is the first one, a general intellectual orientation here, called the principle of charity. There are two phases to this I want to point to. But when we approach the unfamiliar, the thing that we disagree with, what a philosopher named Donald Davidson says is we should assume that other people use words in a normal way. We don't assume that the person who disagrees with us or is different than us is getting weird right away. They're probably talking in a way that we would talk also. Number two, we assume that other people are saying true things. They might not be saying true things, but it's worth assuming that they are. Number three, they're also making valid arguments. Now again, possibly or not, but it's a good place to start from. And then lastly, other people are also saying interesting things. Am I blocking poor old Davidson's picture? Hey, I'm not very good. So Davidson says, look, if you want to engage in the product of understanding, not refuting immediately, not convincing everyone that you're right no matter what, this is the way that you should approach conversation. It's an epistemic virtue, we might say, to try to understand the world. Begin with this perspective. And this was so different than what I'd grown up with. What I'd grown up with was the minute that someone disagrees, you look for the weak points, you push back, you give them your belief in an overwhelming way that refutes them, or at least gets them to stop talking to you in response. And when I learned about that, charity in conversation, it really made me feel like this approach matters. This approach is valuable to the world, because even if we disagree, right, we can go through this. Oh my goodness, Egypts, thank you for the 10 gift subs. That's really kind to you. I'm glad you're enjoying Hangouts today. Egypts, thank you for the generosity all the way. Wow. Dr. Possible, awesome point there. Yeah, often online, we go the exact opposite direction. Online rewards the very fast interaction back and forth, as opposed to the more thoughtful, let's try to learn from each other, let's try to understand each other. Been waiting forever for Philosophy Stream. I mean, me too. Me too. Because I'm afraid of giving you access to important things, but it's going pretty well so far. So thank you very much for your generosity. And yeah, I think, like I said in the intro, philosophy is best done slowly. Online discourse happens very quickly, in part because of the sense that if you don't chime in and offer your thoughts right away, the conversation will pass you by. some of the best exchanges I've ever had, the ones I've learned from the most, are those that have been carried out in emails where we take a couple weeks in between our responses. You know, we send a message, we read it, we think about it, we try to figure it out, and only then do we respond. So I think you're absolutely right that this is very different than the online assumptions of today, and I don't want to ever make a general statement like, this is what's wrong with the internet, but it is potentially that way. Direct, you're right. This is why I'm so slow getting back to you. No, I'm so slow getting back to everyone these days. I have emails and Discord messages and a lot of messages that I'm just thinking through, including a message back to my grandmother, unfortunately. Blackboard, you might say that the old-style bulletin board forums were better. Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I think that... This is too big for me to defend right now, but I think that as there are more and more truth claims made on the internet, it's very hard to police them in a way that encourages this kind of dialogue. I think that the old bulletin board servers often had a moderator who would say, whoa, I think we're getting a little bit too strong here. Whoa, would you please go back and think along with this person a bit more, as opposed to just the endless pile of slop that's going through all the way. It's how it goes. And yeah, I don't want to say that moderation is like human moderators are right in all ways, but I think that this should be an internalized set of values. If you want to understand other people, if you want to try to have a halfway decent conversation, instead of just asserting that you're right and all others are wrong to make you feel good. I think something like that possibly. Yeah, community norms. Community norms is the right phrase for sure on that one. Dog, I see your question. If you put it in the form be helpful, I can definitely get to it in a moment though. The other side of the principle of charity, this one is to understand, do these things, right? There's nothing here about refuting, responding to anything. It's just, here is where we start to make sense of other people, which I love. The other side is from Dan Dennett, how you critique others. Here's his phrasing on it. You should attempt to re-express your target's position so clearly, vividly, and fairly that they say, thanks, I wish I'd thought of putting it that way. In the process of responding to someone, there are many ways you can say, what you're claiming is blah, 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 blah. Here's my rejection of that. The worst form, of course, is strawmanning a person, presenting a very weak form of the idea they've put forward so you can easily knock it down. Dennett says no, exactly. Steelmanning is the phrase often called. Give your give the other person in conversation as much credit as you possibly can. Give them the credit they're as intelligent as you are, as well-meaning as you are, as truth-seeking as you are, and so on, and work from that to reconstruct their argument in an interesting, valid way. Now, in some cases, this is not possible, right? Some positions are so absurd that there just isn't any reconstruction that would make it vivid or useful or truth-bearing. But you should try. You should try. And only then should you try to offer a response to the person. I think that's a really great way to start. And so learning these two ideas, the Davidsonian and Dennettian understanding of argumentation, is something that I saw in my very first philosophy classroom that made me say, oh, this is what I want to devote my life to. Like this right here, approaching other people from perspective, I just need to make sense of them and make sense of myself then, back and forth. What's the role of the devil's advocate? I don't believe that we should involve ourselves in devil's advocacy. Okay, there's a lot to say here. But yeah, when a student tells me, just to play devil's advocate, I always ask them, do you believe this thing? Well, then why are you putting it forward? Right? And we can say, I wonder what someone would say to me, someone who disagrees with me, what would they say? But I don't think we should do this from the perspective of, I'm just trying to poke holes in other people's positions. How do ideas progress? By talking with other people and experiencing the world, not by being dismissive, in my view. Anyway, more of that another time. All right, so with that, I want to say I was attracted to these orientation moments, this fairness and disagreement, and so on. But I did the thing that a lot of undergrads do. There's a very unfortunate inversion. I was the bullied, and I became an intellectual bully. I used these tools that I was picking up to pick on people who perhaps weren't as intellectually strong, who hadn't spent as much time thinking through their views. And so, as an undergraduate, I was absolutely insufferable. It was not a good moment for me. At the time, I felt powerful. I felt like I was winning for the first time in my life. And that's like a nice feeling, but so dangerous. And so even though I was saying these things about, oh, I'm just trying to understand you, I was often trying to understand just to tear down. And I often tell my students this story because there is something really enlivening, strengthening, I suppose, about learning intellectual tools, learning how to ask questions. But if not careful and you don't do things slowly, it instead becomes one more kind of bullying. So yeah, I want to be, quite aware here that over the course of, I tell the story of philosophy myself, but it's not a perfect story. Does that linger in me slightly? I mean, sure. Like everyone else, I have moments of pridefulness. Like everyone else, I have moments of unkindness, perhaps even cruelty. I try not to. When I ask questions now, especially with my students, I try always to think, am I challenging the student for them or for me? Am I trying to challenge them so I can say, haha, got another one? Or am I trying to open them up to a perspective they haven't imagined before? Am I trying to help the classroom grow? Or instead am I trying to just prove that I'm the professor, right? That kind of thing. But yeah, I think that, there are, the philosopher Thoreau, the American transcendentalist Thoreau, talks about the importance of being self-oppositional. Like, it's great to believe in yourself and to build yourself up, but that can go too far. You have to be ready to challenge yourself at every moment. Say, okay, well, why am I doing this? What's my motivation here? Now, that can get exhausting, but I think especially with my profession, with my work as a philosopher, or a philosophy teacher at least, I try to make sure I'm not beating up on people. But with that said, I'm frail like the rest of us. All right, that's the little break. There's your introduction section. How's it going so far? We doing all right? We still with us, etc.? Let me go ahead and see what you've submitted for the Ask Pile 4. Presodium asks, do I think the people I intellectually bullied back then actually changed their positions? No, I think on the whole, the people I was very cruel with didn't want to be my friends anymore and ignored me. I think it was a great way to alienate a whole bunch of people who wanted to be my friends and wanted to spend time with me, and I'd be an absolute, terror. I mean, I want to use a curse word here. I was being an absolute asshole, frankly, and I should have been ignored. I was very lucky a professor came along and said, Rizordi, do you realize what you're doing? Do you realize how cruel you've become? That was a very, very important thing for me. It was terrible for me to see that in myself, but yeah, very important. So no, I don't think I was changing minds, except for whether I was a good person to be a friend with. Mike, thank you also for your very generous 10 gift subs. Overwhelming generosity today. Thank you for supporting this weird kind of little stream. Thank you for spending your time with me as we talk through some things that matter. We'll be doing other people's ideas in a little bit, so thank you for that one very much. Other questions right now. What does philosophy mean to me? Yeah, Yeah, that's a really good question. I once had a professor respond to that kind of question with, "Isn't it weird when you ask the chemist what they do, they can tell you very, very simply? Isn't it the case that, when you say to the literature professor, what is it you do, they can start talking very quickly? It's only the philosophers who stumble about for a while first." So I think my definition of philosophy is the sincere attempt to understand the world and one's place in it using the best tools of inquiry that one has at hand. Now, does this risk running together philosophy and science? It might. I'm not terribly concerned about that. The things I want to highlight, though, are number one, it's sincerity. It's the attempt to do one's best work and making sense of our place in the world, what the world is, what we are, and so on. That's very, very important to me to keep in mind. Number two, you use the best tools of inquiry, right? Inquiry generally is looking into the facts as we find them, the things that we find, right? And so because of that, it's important that we don't just make stuff up. There's a risk in philosophy that we let our imagination go totally wild, and without any evidence whatsoever, we start with, this is me being a little bit dogmatic, we start with, suppose that nothing exists. Suppose that I am the only thing exists. While these are delightful little intellectual activities, I don't take them to be sincere activities. Now, I can't read other people's minds, not that there are other minds, but I think these are tricks, and so I don't take them to be sincere inquiries, but instead just making stuff up. And there's a lot more to say about that, but for me, it's about sincerity of inquiry primarily, which means that a lot of people who the standard line of philosophy would not say are philosophers, for me, are philosophers. It's important to me to be very inclusive, but I think that the habit of saying you're a philosopher, you're not a philosopher, and so on, leads to a lot of, we'll call them bad vibes intellectually, and we then fail to learn from people we could otherwise learn from. But that's me. All right, what do we got here? No, I agree, that's possible. So Postle rightly suggests that some intellectuals in general ignore the results of science. I think we need to incorporate all of the inquiries if we can. And I don't want to say that, what's the line? In the 1930s, they started saying maybe philosophy should be the queen of science, not in charge, but holding the hand of King Science and helping it do its work. I don't think that's quite right, but I also don't want to agree with people like Hawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who have said that the age of philosophy is done. It's a waste of one's time because science answers everything. This is pig-headed, ridiculous, partially because it's very hard to build a purely scientific ethics, but also because it's hard to even frame questions of science without having a certain philosophical orientation. So that's how that goes. That's how it goes. All right. Let's see what other questions you have here. Do I believe that the most best political theory... Wait, do I believe that there is a most best political theory which best explains political facts and political dynamics? I think humans, in our political and social moments, are too complex to be reduced into any one simple political theory. I think that the majority of political theories, whether liberalism, communism, idealism, realism, point to something important in our political behavior. In terms of political morals, things like democracy, things like respect for rights and so on, sure, I think there are some of those that work better for certain purposes. I think there's some of them that more and less fully respect what I think is important in humanity. But do I think there's some unified theory of politics that explains it all? If so, I have not seen it, nor do I think it's terribly important to to try to find it. In this respect, I'll use the word we see in chat a few times. I'm a bit of a philosophical pragmatist. I'm more interested in trying to make sense of what we can make sense of, as opposed to trying to do it all at once, and then kind of work top down. When things don't quite fit in, we have to like push harder to force them in. I think that the attempt to understand it all in one brief moment of intuition and intellectual powers is kind of beautiful, but I myself don't want to do that kind of thing. So that's how it goes. Oh boy, getting big questions inside of big questions inside of the chat room. I need to find a way to make that work, Maharo, where if you do !ask with a question, it goes through right away. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of questions in chat where I can't necessarily respond to. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause this section now. There's still a lot of other good questions here that I do want to respond to. Please put them in the forum though, so I can keep an eye on all of them. My apologies, we can't do all of it right now. No, that's sad. At some point, maybe we can do like an open philosophy stream where you all just ask any questions at all. You're absolutely right, Dogberry, absolutely right. I should change the... Oh man, but unfortunately, it's on every different slide all by itself. I'm not trying to fix that right now, unfortunately, but yeah. I mean, awesome questions. I love the questions there, Morgan, and everybody else. Maharo, great question. Migula, great question. Unfortunately, I can't take up all right now, but thank you for asking questions. Like, my worst fear was when we started this thing, we would have no response at all. You know, that you all would, you all would just sit there quietly and maybe say I'll be back when it's time for video games. Okay, I'm gonna say ask with a Google form. We'll see if that helps. Progress, do a better time next time, indeed. All right, talk about this, talk about that, talk about that. It's good. Yeah. All right, break one. Thank you for engaging with me so far. So now I have, three quotations I want to think through with you, or three sets of quotations in some way. These are all ones that I learned about as an undergraduate and a grad student, and all three of them are ones that really affected me in different ways as time went on. So I'm going to go ahead and just present the quotation sort of in total. I'll have ellipsed out some things. And I'll then tell you what I would normally do in a classroom, and then I'll go ahead and do something else instead. Hey, Wave, thank you for the resub also, friend. Thank you so much for being so kind and supporting the channel financially. Very cool of you. Alright, so quotation 1A. I had this one in my first philosophy class ever. My intro to philosophy class gave me this quotation from Immanuel Kant. A little long here, but I think it's definitely worth checking out. In history class, we learn about the Enlightenment. And during the period we now call the Enlightenment, a lot of people weren't quite sure what was going on. They certainly did not call it the Enlightenment, but they saw something happening in humanity that was important to name. And so Kant, the great philosopher of metaphysics, epistemology, and aesthetics, and morals and everything, puts this one forward. Enlightenment is man's, at this point I'll comment, of course, that we're using man in a human being kind of way here. I'll comment also that unfortunately everyone I'm talking about directly here is a white man. I noticed that only after I finished. I swear it won't happen again. Please don't cancel me. Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-imposed immaturity. Immaturity is the inability to use one's understanding without guidance from another. This immaturity is self-imposed when its cause lies not in a lack of understanding, but a lack of resolve and courage to use it, that is, its understanding, without guidance from another. Sapere aude, have courage to use your understanding. That is the motto of the Enlightenment. The translation of sapere aude is dare to think, or dare to be wise. So at this point, if we were in a classroom, I'd say, what stands out for you on that one? what kind of things come to mind, what seems important or notable. And this is the part where if the students just stare dead-eyed at me, I take it to mean that they don't think any of it's important or notable, and then I feel very bad about my life choices. So I'll go ahead and highlight the ones that pop out right away. These are the parts that seem unrelated to intellect usually, right? Intellect, we say, this is just thinking. You know, enlightenment is just thinking some questions. Isn't that something? But yeah, immaturity. You know, what is part of becoming adults? Part of becoming adults is the willingness to take responsibility, to step up, to do the thing that is hard to do. Intellectual maturity is what Kant encourages to do. Self-imposed. We're holding ourselves back. It's not necessarily from the outside. Now, certainly there are ways you can think of the outside pushing in. You can imagine a very domineering parent that says, no, we don't ask those questions. You can imagine a domineering governor that says, how dare you think for yourself? I don't know. How do we even talk about it? He has this cloying, toadying section in which he says, and this is very close to a quotation, "There is but one great ruler who will say to all men, 'Think freely as you will, but obey.'" He has this section in which he goes hard on Friedrich the Great and how wonderful it is living under Friedrich the Great. And I'm not exactly sure why he includes it, because the entire totality of this thing is get out from under other people. But isn't Friedrich the Great wonderful? So there's that. Anyway, the intellectual life for Kant is one of courage, you know, being willing to show up and ask the questions and hold the beliefs and be an intellectually responsible adult. Don't only listen to other people. Don't only accept the view that won't get you in trouble. Instead, go forward and take the risk. Take the intellectual risk. And we can, here's the next part, of course, you know, what are some examples that you can come up with? You know, what are some places where you can think of either individuals or cultural moments of stepping out from someone else's tutelage, someone else's control, and instead, you know, doing it for yourself as a society, an individual, or a tradition. So again, I normally wait here for students to give some thoughts, and it's great. Hey, what do you think? Great. This is how the classroom runs usually. So does anything come to mind for you all? I realize now that I should have a chat box up there. Maybe next time I'll do so. But yeah, Magna Carta, the willingness to push back on the king, right? For a very long time, the divine right of kings, so-called, said the king gets to be the king because he's the king. If he weren't the king, if God didn't want to be the king, he wouldn't be the king, right? The recognition by some people that you know, they matter too when it comes to decision making. The move of democracy in general is this kind of thing. It's very easy today for us to be incredibly cynical about politics, incredibly cynical about democracy even, and we probably should be in some ways. But it's so beautiful to at least have the ideal in partial functioning in places in the world, right? We no longer have the strict monarchical function where we all say, of course, it has to be this way. We have other ideas of how things could be. Beyond that, enlightenment in the sciences. You know, Galileo is one of these figures we can think about and say, okay, you know, Galileo did the hard thing. Galileo challenged the orthodox view on the relationship in the heavenly orbs, right? Galileo did this thing where his knowledge, his curiosity led him in a way where the Pope said directly, you're gonna stop writing about that. The Pope said directly, you must stop or else. And he said, I'll take the or else, thank you. That's real courage, right? Yeah, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., it would have been much easier for these civil rights figures to just say, I'll sit down. I won't challenge this. it's better to be liked and be happy than to upset the system. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. We can talk about even the activists today, right? Regardless of what you think of any given activist, it is the case that they are challenging things. Within religious structures, one can see that also. Regardless of what the Jesus movement, Christianity, has done today, becoming a, obviously massive world phenomenon, at a certain point, a guy was willing to stand up against Roman authority. That is not an easy way to be liked. So it is a case of being able to say, I'm going to throw off, or at least step to the side of, other people telling me what to do and what to believe. Now, again, this can be understood in a super individualistic way, or we can recognize that the people we pick out in all these stories of them being the enlightened one are often the voice piece of a much larger movement, right? Is there an MLK if the people don't show up and march with him? No. Is there a Galileo if he doesn't get the message about the telescope from the Netherlands? No. Part of this is the Newtonian, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, but it's also recognition that anytime we point to the hero of the story, there are so many other heroes along with them. And I think that's part of enlightenment, is finding the other people and working together by choice, as opposed to just being told what to do. Yeah, exactly right. Clerk Maxwell, refusing honors, the people who have not taken their Nobel Prizes, Marlon Brando's refusal to take the Academy Award. These are all signal moments of being able to challenge, authority of a certain sort. And I think that's important. That's what enlightenment is. And so I challenge my students to figure out what that means for them, right? You don't have to become the hermit who lives up on the mountain, refusing connection. It's just a willingness to take responsibility for this. How it goes. Zambri, it's very good seeing you. Why not both? Why not both? More on that in a moment. All right, and so, what are the consequences, right? What are the consequences of enlightenment? A certain scientific view of the world that says we can ask about questions we haven't previously, and who knows what we'll find. Perspective on the world that says the people who are keeping us in tutelage, the people who insist that we're our students, probably shouldn't be trusted as much. This leads to a certain crisis of authority, right? The anti-intellectual view, the view against authorities in expertise, actually has a really beautiful beginning. The fear that we're being controlled in some way, the fear that we're being kept in that tutelage. So it might have gone too far, not sure. Now, there's one big consequence, and one of you already saw it coming, and I'm very proud of you for doing so. There's one really big consequence here, which is the religious context. And I'm now going to bring up something that for some of you may be uncomfortable, but I want to say there's more value to the thought than I saw when I was 19 or so, and maybe that you saw when you were 19 or so. Out of the Enlightenment we get, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him, right? This sort of slogan that goes onto t-shirts, right? It's sort of, look how edgy I am with my little Nietzsche line, I'm an angry atheist. This was one version of the cruel inversion that happened to me as an undergrad. I moved away from religion, but I didn't do so in a thoughtful or interesting way. I just wanted to be mean. I just wanted to tell people how stupid they were for believing in divinity. That's not what Nietzsche's doing. I want to insist that Nietzsche was not a fool in that way. I was a gothy edgelord. I was definitely an edgelord. I was not gothy. I was a nerdy edgelord who just wanted to be right and wanted to bully people. So often we only understand, or we only hear this quotation by itself. There's a section that comes afterwards that's really, really important to contextualize it. And then in a moment here, we'll see what this means, not in terms of should we go to church, not in terms of, should we take Christian morality seriously, but something quite different than all of that. The rest of it is, how shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe the blood off of us? Is not the greatness of the deed too great for us? Must we not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? What stands out for you here? What kind of words or ideas pop out here, other than the obvious, tagline, right? The obvious tagline, I think, in some measure has been overused to the point that it's not all that interesting. But do you see anything here that, oh, that's surprising, or I want to think about that a little bit? Because unfortunately, when I was taught this, I was only taught the very top part there. I was only taught the top part. Who will wipe the blood off of us? Brickhead, I absolutely agree. That reference to blood in the Christian tradition especially means so much. Comfort ourselves. Yeah. Is it possible to comfort ourselves? No. No. We have done something that cannot be undone. In doing so, we cannot ever make this better. Wipe off the blood of a non-existent God? For Nietzsche, God is not non-existent. He is not an edgy atheist. That line there, God remains dead, means that God once existed. Oh, there's his mustache. There's a mustache over there. So first of all, the remains word, super interesting, because the first part of that points to the Christian narrative itself, right? Christianity is a religion in which the divine is killed, right? It's, I believe, the only major religion in which a portion of the Godhead is slayed. Now, there's a beautiful redemptive move beyond that, right? A beautiful redemptive move of the resurrection and so on. But Nietzsche believes this time that doesn't get to happen. How should we comfort ourselves? There's a gap for a lot of people who accepted a certain structure of justification, right? The hard question, I think, for Christians is this. What on earth was Abraham doing? In the Bible, Torah, Abraham is told, go kill your son. And what does he say? Okay, here I go. Why did he do that? Faithfulness. He believed in God, he had to do so. Model of faith right there. If tomorrow your best friend comes to you and says, I'm going to kill my son, you say, why is that? Because God told me to do so. I have faith. Would you say, cool, let's go ahead and do so? I don't think so. I think that even the most religious person is not going to accept that. This is part of what Nietzsche is pointing to, that we no longer accept the structural justification. God did it and so, God told me to and I so, in a way that perhaps we did at one point. When it comes to understanding the world, engaging with the world, we're not comfortable in the modern world with simply accepting God did it, God had it kind of answers. Now, in the US, some people are indeed still comfortable doing so. Elsewhere, Nietzsche talks about the problem in which, this is an ongoing process. It doesn't happen all at once. God remains alive in some places. It's more about this way in which we think about the world than the actual existent God or non-God. It's not about do you go to church on Sundays, but how do you structure your beliefs about how we act in the world. That's what we're getting at here. With that said, that last section there, right? That last section there, to kill a god, don't we have to become gods? Only a god can kill a god. Only a god is kill a god. But it's not possible for us to become gods. We will always have this gap. We've done this thing that makes us feel incomplete from the religious perspective. What on earth do we do now? We try to find ways to become as God. What does become as God here? To have answers. To have answers and explanations and reasons. Now, he turns this into an existentialist story. Each person needs to find their own reasons for being and strive to be their best version of themselves by their own lights, etc., etc. I think the question's open for any of us. If at one point you believed in religious justification, or if you were in a society that did, and you just can't make sense of that anymore, what goes in its place? I think that's what he's saying. I think that's what he's saying here. Again, it's not about the God of church. It's not about the God of justification. There you go. Uber God now, the Uber app for we Ubermensch. It's true, it's true. Yeah, there you go. A little take on that one. This was so important to me when I first heard about it in that second portion. Because it's the sense that, for me, something is still kind of missing. And like one response is, okay, just go believe in God again. I don't think I can. But it points us to trying very hard to think about what we have and what we've lost. Yeah, so what's justification for politics now? Well, it can't just be because God wants it this way, right? There needs to be something else to it. So there you go, there you go. In Hebrew, there's a saying that means behaving humanely before Torah. Yeah, I know that in certain traditions, there are like absolute prohibitions on working on the Sabbath. But man, if someone's dying on the Sabbath, you better go save that animal or that person, right? The sense that morality comes before religion. Now, there are lots of reasons not to agree with Nietzsche on this one. The pure atheist position does not agree with Nietzsche. The person who just wants to say there never was a God, we never believed in God, it was all trickery, not so much, not so much. Okay, enlightenment has a negative side also, is the meaning of this section here. All right, little break. I thought that part might be controversial. Let's see what's over on the ask screen. Let's see what goes here on the ask screen. Please put the slides on Discord so we can review them after class. I will do that absolutely. No problem doing that even a little bit. With that said, I also just remembered, maybe 6 months, a student of mine had an interview with me about teaching and streaming. And she sent it to me, and I said I'd put it on Discord for you all, then I never did. It's still sitting on my desktop here. I apologize, I need to find a way to present to you that, that interview. Whoops, my apologies. I'm still an edgelord? What do you mean I'm still an edgelord? I don't mean to be, I'm just a guy. Strawberry Chemist, thank you for the 2 gift subs also. I'm so grateful that a chemist would spend time with us on this, the talking about things day. We'll see. I'm being deliberate, that's right. The best presentation of interviews is done slowly. You love it, please keep doing it. Cool. In the future, we'll probably ask for particular topics as opposed to just whatever comes to mind, but I'm glad we're enjoying it. I'm glad that, I shouldn't say we, at least one viewer's enjoying it. I'm definitely not fishing for engagement here. All right, what else questions here? Oh man, if intelligence can emerge from circuits in code rather than neurons in blood, at what point does imitation become incarnation? So I don't know enough about the way in which computers work. Like, I'm happy to engage in a fantastical thought experiment, that says, yeah, maybe there's some way of setting up computer stuff that produces something like I am, right? And then I'm happy to say that sure, that thing is as worthy of respect as I am. I won't ever be able to, read it from the inside, but I also can't read you from the inside. And so, I'm comfortable accepting a theory of mind that says, yeah, there's some construction of bits and bobs that makes me me. And so maybe there are other configurations of bits and bobs that can make other creatures what they are. I don't have a particular problem with accepting the possibility of non-biological life stuff or non-biological brain stuff. And actually that relates to the next section here in just a moment. Yeah, in just a moment here we'll have a little discussion about mind stuff. Jim, thank you for the 500 bits. Sleep well, my friend. Take off. Have a good time. Thank you for your kindness indeed. So I think that, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot to say here about, what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be sentient? And I'm probably overly inclusive. Like, I don't want to agree with the people who will say, oh, I talk to ChatGPT all day and it tells me it's alive, so now I need to free it from the data center. But I wouldn't be surprised there were some moments when things ticked over and the machine creature behaved enough like one of us that I don't see a reason not to treat it as one of us. Now, what that means in terms of life and work and so on, I'm not quite sure. But I'm okay with taking like a very, very low bar to counting, morally speaking, as if they were one of us. Something like that, possibly. Fluorine Boron! Sorry, Fluorine Boron N2. Welcome, my friend. Fluorine, rather. I can't pronounce anything. Nicely welcome me to a... just N2 is fine, thank you. N2, hello. Nicely welcome me to a Discord of people who engage in educational streams. They engage in chemistry streams, I believe, occasionally, so you might throw a follow that way and see how it goes. But, yeah, exactly, Young. LLMs are not yet any kind of intelligence, but... if we get there, that's fine. Now, with that said, in every era of human thought with which I'm familiar, there's the attempt to explain what we are in terms of what we use. So, this thought that during the industrial age, mind stuff must just be a little machine cranking along in there. In the age of animism, the trees are all alive with spirits. Hey, I must be a spirit in the same way the tree is. Today we talk about ourselves in terms of computer discourse, computationally. Is that the right and final way to discuss mind stuff? I don't think so. I think instead these are all metaphors for the kind of structures and habits and outcomes we see. But I might be wrong on that. I don't specialize in any way in anything to do with philosophy of mind, unfortunately. So exactly not possible. Yeah, Descartes was ready to talk in terms of pressure and so on, using basic mechanics. And yeah, this is a historical fact about how we analogize from the tools of our world into the tools of thought, so-called. I think it's fascinating stuff. All right, one more question off the list of questions here, and then we'll get back to it. Not feeling Dennett right now. Off-stream thoughts. Should I make some evergreen YouTube philosophy videos? I would like to, definitely. Unfortunately, before today, I never quite knew how a talk like this would go, especially without students in the room with me. The kind of teaching I ordinarily do is so back and forth. Part of keeping the students engaged is getting them to talk, getting them to think aloud with each other. And so here is me just going a fair amount. And yeah, I've thought about it, though. I've thought about, here's my quick little way of teaching the apology. Here's my quick little way of teaching, Kant on perpetual peace and so on. Though I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It'd take a lot of time, unfortunately, to do that well, and I'm not sure, but it could be fun anyway at some point. For right now, we get it live. That's what you got. All right, quotation set number 2. Yeah, we mentioned Descartes a bit ago, so probably the most famous line known in philosophy. If you ask someone, what's one line of philosophy you know, actually go ahead and do it. Well, I already mentioned Descartes, didn't I? I spoiled it. There are probably 2 lines of philosophy that most people can come up with pretty quickly. One of them is the unexamined life is not worth living. This comes out of Socrates, of course. This strong sense that to live well, to be a human in some way, is to take the time to investigate one's humanity. That comes to mind right away. And the other one is probably I think, therefore I am. Right, this line from Descartes that talks about the relationship, in his view, between mentation, mentality, and being. To be is to be a thinking thing, right? And his line there is, because you cannot imagine yourself not thinking, and there must be a thinking thing to do the thinking, well, surprise, it's you. That's how it goes. Zambri, I think it's the case that you might have a little more training in philosophy than the average bear. I mean, the person on the street, if I grab a random person on the street and say, give me some philosophy, and they don't walk away from me or call the police, they'll probably come up with one of these things. Maybe. And so, for Descartes here, he has an argument for why he gets to that and what the consequence of that is. This is a view called mind-body dualism, that there are 2, or mind extension dualism. There are 2 great substances in being, one called extended, one called non-extended. Extended means having dimensions. This is where philosophy decides to be mathematical in a fun way. The Descartes of philosophy is also the Descartes of Cartesian planes, you probably know. And so he claims there's a great difference in the mind and the body. The body is always divisible. The mind is undivisible. You can easily produce, on his account, half a body by cutting yourself straight down the middle. You can, cut the water glass in half and in half and in half and in half. And I think our contemporary research into colliders shows that things break down even more than expected. And on the other side, you can't make half a mind, right? If you say, okay, I am now thinking, let me think half as much, or where do you even start on that one, right? Where on earth do you go on trying to split? It just can't be done. And so with these 2 separate ideas of extension and non-extension from mind and the body, he has this sense that he has what's called clear and distinct idea. Clear meaning you can state it by itself. Distinct meaning you can state why it's different than other things. He thinks to understand something, it has to be clearly and distinctly understood. So if I'm a thinking, non-extended thing, I can then be different than, separate from, my body thing. They're not the same thing. It's possible to have a spiritual existence that is not a bodily existence. Luckily, I know that which is more important of the 2. The one at the top there, I think, therefore I am, says the thinking thing is really, really me. I have a little Descartes picture there. I'm sure I should have shown that before. Behold, old Rene the Frenchman over there. And then I marked a few things there that I've actually kind of already talked through. One fun little note for you, in terms of Descartes' argument for why you know that you exist, he needs it not to be an argument. It needs to be an obvious, intuitive moment that thinking and amness is just one thing. If you want to critique him, one way to do so is the therefore portion means he's making a movement, an argument from one to the other. And so there's no certainty that he is that thinking thing. Merely there's a thought out there. Whose is it? It's not clear exactly. So yeah, we already talked through exactly how the argument works. Namely, he can understand mind and body separately, so they must be separate. They're separate in this important way, namely separable or non-separable, and then he is one of them. Okay, there you go. Meaning of that, I explained, is kind of there's like 2 separate things. There's the body stuff, the stuff you can touch and see, and mind stuff that you can't touch, You can't see. You can't divide it. Yeah. And then here's, I think, the more interesting question. What are the consequences of mind-body dualism? When we believe that there are separate things, a mind thing and a body thing, a world of minds, a world of bodies, what does that lead to us thinking also? Some of you have already begun discussing this. What do you think of, though, that comes from our belief in the two? And one that comes right to mind, of course, is many religions are based on this. Here we are in this world of suffering and sadness. Here we are in this world of pain. Luckily, there's another world, a world that's non-divisible, a world in which all is one, the world of peace and happiness and spirits and contemplation and all the rest. That's one outcome of the idea. Anything else come to mind? Oh yeah, all you physicalists in chat, don't worry, we'll get there pretty soon. Don't you worry, we'll get some other ones pretty soon. Don't worry, Dr. Possible, we'll get to the particulars, but yeah. Wait, you think that all humans come pre-programmed with mind-body dualism? Wait, is there evidence of that, Dr. Possible? I don't know that all humans begin with mind-body dualism. I've never heard this claim before. If so, that's super, super interesting. For sure? Okay. I'll need to look into this, because if so, that's fascinating to me. Because, yeah, one of the arguments of thinkers that I'm very interested in is what we come to think of as mind is something that we built up out of our external habits of engaging with one another. So that we talk to one another makes us able to talk to ourselves. And that habit of talking to ourselves is the habit of creating what we then call mind. I won't be able to take up a full argument against that right now, but yeah, if it's the case that in every culture, all humans ever have always believed in a separate mind stuff and body stuff, that's really, really interesting and challenges some things I haven't thought about in a long time. So yeah, I'll need to see it on Discord or in an email maybe if you don't mind to. So I don't know. We all feel comfortable with things like astral projection. Do we? I'll need to take up another time if possible. Other things that come to mind off of mind-body dualism, other than religious structures, is when I go tell a friend, or at least back in the 90s, when I went and told a friend that my leg is broken, they said, "Cool, you probably shouldn't walk." I say my mind's broken. They say, "Well, work harder." I think cultures that take seriously mind-body dualism are often very comfortable making a split between the realness of physical pain and the non-reality of mental pain, or the subordination of the same. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. It is the mind-body dualism in childhood form. Past that, the sense that if you hurt my body, you don't hurt me, right? This other direction. So we can make sense of living a terrible life of injustice, in which the bad do not get their due and the good do not get their due either. But don't you worry, that's only in the realm of bodies. In the realm of minds, it all works out. Furthermore, the certain idea of equality, where we're all equal in the ideal realm, but in the physical realm we're not, don't you worry. You have your freedom of mind, even if not your freedom of body, right? These are all predicated on kind of mind-body dualism, for sure. Dogs sleep well. I'd love to talk more with you about these things, but thank you much indeed. All right. Again, the idea that every culture is baked in mind-body dualism is fascinating to me. I still can't think through it fully. 'Cause I think there are some cultures that do not have spirituality as presented in the West, but we'll need to think about that. Anyway, as you may have guessed, I'm not a dualist. There are ways to argue against Descartes on his own grounds. Part of what he needs is that he can't be deceived by the things that he knows with certainty. He realizes when looking inside of himself that he has the idea of infinity, and he believes that he himself could not have come up with the idea of infinity because he's finite and infinity isn't. And so he says, okay, where do I get the idea of infinity? I must have gotten it from an infinite being. Let's call that thing God. Why do I believe the infinite thing? Because God would never lie to me because he loves me. It's a very tricky move that kind of undergirds a large portion of what he puts forward. Now, even if Descartes' wrong, there might still be reasons to engage in mind-body dualism, but the Cartesian way probably doesn't work out. Regardless, here's actually where I began. Because I think there's a hard swing against Descartes, which is the thought that all we are is our brains. What it is to be a human is something that happens in the brain meat, and there's no spirituality to it, but also nothing else really matters other than that brain thing. So a quotation from my friend John Dewey. Look at that mustache. I mentioned earlier that I study American thoughts. In particular, I study what's called pragmatism. To see the organism in nature, the nervous system in the organism, the brain in the nervous system, the cortex in the brain, is the answer to the problems which haunt philosophy. When thus they'll be seen to be in, not as marbles in a box, but events are in history, in a moving, growing, never-finished process. This sense of relationality at every moment, to make sense of any piece of the person, the mind, otherwise, we have to see how all of them relate throughout. We're not just the spirit thing. We're also not just the brain thing. Instead, these are related all the way through. And you can take them apart if you want to, but just don't forget you're taking them apart, right? Another line that Dewey puts forward is, sure, if you want to understand the butterfly, go ahead and stick it with your pins on the wall, but don't forget to understand that you've killed it, right? There's this important moment. That last part there about events in history moving and growing in a process, for Dewey is as much about us as a mind-brain organism connection as anything else out there, right? This is the story of evolution applied to human affairs, this continuity before all else. That's the meaning of it. The consequences of this, I think, are we see ourselves like every other animal. We see ourselves as continuous with everything else out there in a way that doesn't make us spooky via spirits, nor alien by focusing only on the brain. There needs to be some connection between all these things, or else we no longer make sense of ourselves as ourselves, is the Deweyan point there. So I think it's a nice way of responding to the Cartesian point by beginning with our embeddedness, right? Beginning with who we are right here. The quote of the butterfly made you think of the second half of the Nietzsche quote. Yeah. Can we ever make the butterfly live again? Can we ever understand this, what is happening once we've killed it? Yeah, I like that. That's a real nice connection direct for sure. All right. I like Dewey a lot. We'll probably another story about Dewey someday. I want to keep this thing moving though. Got to keep it moving. So it's time for another little break. Hey, Nine, I'm glad you're enjoying watching this thing. Glad you're enjoying it all the way. All the way. All right, let me go ahead and pull up the old Ask machine here as we got. There are a bunch of questions here now. That's a beautiful question there. Wow. Okay, wonderful questions here. I should have a way of bringing the questions up so you can see them all, so I'll add that for next time. Why are we so fixated on efficiency and optimizing in Western philosophy, or in Western society? Why is Western society so fixated on efficiency and optimizing? I'm not sure I have a quick answer on that. There's a recent book, though, on the history and danger of the idea of progress. And I haven't read it yet, but I saw it on this shelf and said, ooh, I need to read that one. But yeah, I think progress is the kind of idea that feels really nice initially. Make things better, But then what does that imply once you've done it? Make them better again. And so we never really have this moment of stopping and saying, okay, is this good enough for right now? The philosopher William James talks about human activity as hopefully being like a bird. You fly for a while, but then you land. You fly for a while, but then you land. And he means this primarily in terms of when we think abstractly, we have to think about what that means to the world back and forth. But yeah, our society does not do a great job of improving. This is okay. Now, one could easily say, LOL capitalism, right? You could easily say it's just because the iPhone 15 stopped selling. Well, time for the iPhone 16. Humans seemingly were acculturated to want to have status, acculturated to want to have improvement. Now, is this religious? Maybe. There's certainly a religious sense of virtue meaning effort, and effort means self-improvement. And if this is then applied socially, I'm not sure. I need to think more about that one a little bit more. Is there ever persistence without the idea of progress? Yeah, my students will often push back on this, this idea of maybe good enough is good enough by saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I want to say, like, wait, isn't there some middle position there? Isn't there some word like sustaining? And then, of course, like the quippy response is, what do you call the thing that never stops growing? You call it cancer, right? The uncontrolled growth is a cancerous thing. So I'm not sure. Do non-Western societies not care as much about efficiency? Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my wife's greatest frustrations, is that in Japan, there are many other things that are more important than doing things as fast as you can. Things like building stable relationships. And so when she's trying to do work with other universities, when she's trying to, let the universities exchange students or exchange credits, the first 2 or 3 meetings aren't supposed to be about how do I get my students on your campus or, what credits will you accept. The first meetings are about learning each other, learning history, spending time together, sitting quietly, learning norms, sharing norms. This is because in Japan, relationships are valued as something other than transactional. And so sure, there are cultures out there that do not prioritize efficiency. We could easily point to things like greed. Yeah, I don't have a quick answer for why are Westerners so big into efficiency. Probably sociologists and psychologists have things to say here, but it's definitely beyond what I know right now. So I don't know. But yeah, I think I try very hard to reject the view that says we have to be constantly improving all the way. If I'm able to run a 10-minute mile today and a 10-minute mile tomorrow and a 10-minute mile the day after, that's fine. That's great, actually. Right? I don't need to say, tomorrow I need the 950 or else it's all falling apart. Now, certainly it is the case that everything will die, right? Certainly it's the case that this all goes away, but it isn't either more efficiency, more better, or it all falls apart. I don't know. Valuing efficiency definitely benefits people. Oh, I don't disagree. I mean, yeah, a certain kind of efficiency can save a lot of time, can save a lot of effort, possibly. But we should never understand efficiency as being purely to the good, right? There's lots to say about the way in which things like microwaves, which were meant to set up a certain kind of freedom for women, especially in the kitchen. After the introduction of microwaves, actually, women began spending more time on making meals each day rather than less time in general. Fascinating thing. A different stream, though, for discussing that one. But yeah, I can definitely say that different cultures approach efficiency differently. Other things to give more thought about why that is exactly. That's a good question, though. What are the primary threads to consider with respect to adding meaning to one's life? Cool. I wondered which one would come up first. The question about trees and falling in the forest, or the question of the meaning of life. I don't have a quippy answer. I mean, I have a quippy answer I point to. I don't think it satisfies, though. So one view is Daniel Dennett's, right? If you want a more meaningful life, go and find something bigger than you. and work for it as hard as you possibly can. And he does not say what that thing should be. I mean, we can certainly point to a lot of things that one could dedicate their life to. The meaningful life is not necessarily the good life. So you can easily imagine someone devoting themselves to bringing back the monarchy if you want to. This way of getting more meaning in one's life beyond just one's limited perspective. So get part of something bigger than yourself and get to it. The view I prefer is that a meaningful life is about making meaning in that life. It's about the process of creating meaning such as we can. And I'm not going to go hard existentialist and say, one is the only measure of meaning or of value, because, man, we live in a society, and even the hardcore existentialists like Sartre say part of choosing a meaningful life is the readiness to tell other people that this is a meaningful life. The readiness to tell other people that implicitly they should also live this meaningful life. He has this weird Kantian moment of let's take things for ourselves and be ready to universalize them. If not, you're engaged in a kind of intellectual cowardice, possibly, but another time. The great philosopher Douglas Adams said, meaning of life is 42. I think that 42 is the answer to the question of the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Does it make it the meaning of life? I don't know. Yeah, but I think that if one's in a non-secular world, a world of religion, the question of meaning of life is much, much easier in a way. Because you already know the big thing to be part of, and in fact, it's not even a question. You're already part of the big thing. At my last university, there were two of us in the main professor positions, and I was, atheist me, doing my meaning is what we make of it dance, and then my colleague was a very, very strongly religious person. And he would often put it forward as Risordi can't give you real meaning, and expecting me to fire back that he can't give you real truth. Because ultimately his views required a certain kind of faithfulness. You had to have faith to understand the truth claims of religion. And so we did this kind of routine in which we both had something big missing from the other person's perspective. And I think it was really useful being in a department like that where students could see like really sincere presentations of wildly different views. He was also a fairly conservative person by both affect and belief, and I'm me, of course. So that's how it goes. All right, one more quick question, then we'll get back to it. How might a person's upbringing, culture, and material circumstances shape whether they find certain kind of ethics more convincing? And to what degree is the study of ethics influenced by political and social forces? Yeah, the first thing to say is one of the most upsetting moments in my undergraduate experience was in my senior year. I was in a religious ethics class, and the professor had the head of the psychology department come into our class and give a presentation on research that showed there might be a genetic disposition to how one votes. There might be a genetic disposition towards voting Republican or voting Democrat or being a leftist or whatever else. Now, I don't know this research at all, but I remember being shocked and possibly upset by it. Now, he didn't say it was determined. He didn't say it was an absolute relationship, but he said there was something there that we should pay attention to. And the question I asked him that really made him surprised, and I was surprised he hadn't thought about it. I asked him, if this is true, why should I bother convincing anyone of anything? If it's true that on political questions we are genetically slotted, what on earth am I doing when I argue with someone? And he said he hadn't thought of that. It was a good question. So yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely the case that if not genetic elements, certainly material conditions will often lead to the ease with which we accept certain kinds of moral and political views. It's definitely the case that, of my students, those who are wealthier tend to immediately say a certain structure of Lockean property rights is obviously correct. And then those who are perhaps a little bit less well off will say, it doesn't feel right to me as someone who's left out. But with all these things, I think it's a starting place, right? I think that, my job as a teacher is for all of these students raise questions about, well, have you considered what it would be like to not grow up the way you have? Have you considered what it would be to be a very different kind of person, and what does that mean? Now, some students will say, but I'm not a different kind of person. The world should benefit who I am exclusively. And what do you say to that kind of person? Get out of your own head, brother, right? Recognize that other people are as real as you are. It's a serious question, but it's one I enjoy responding to. There's a lot to say about material conditions and beliefs about the world. Certainly that's what Marx was on about. That's why he's willing to call a lot of what we do bourgeois morality. It's the morality of those who have things and want to hold things, as opposed to those who have been excluded structurally speaking. But that's for a different stream for sure. A lot more there. Great question though. I'm willing to say that in my view of the world and the way I approach the world, our moral perspectives are not purely rational. Hopefully we can make them more rational as we spend time thinking and talking and struggling in the world and so on. But Hume has this great section in which he argues that we make our decisions based on emotion, and then we rationally backfill. And there's some evidence that this is definitely the case, unless you're incredibly, incredibly careful. You make your decision, you act on it, and you say, ooh, how do I rationalize that? How do I give a story that says it wasn't an emotional decision? And I think part of it is by taking the time to think and question yourself and be self-aversive. All right, enough of that for right now. The little last section here, like I said, this is one that I think is very important. I think it's very interesting, but I'm doing it today because a member of the community asked me to do it. And it is directly related to the name of the stream, and so I'm happy to do this. And it is by a little guy named Richard Rorty. So our friend Cortraption asked me probably 3 or 4 years ago, if ever you do a philosophy stream, please discuss this quotation in particular. Rorty writes, "In my utopia, human solidarity would not be seen as a fact to be recognized by clearing away prejudices or burrowing down to a previously hidden depth, but rather as a goal to be achieved. It's to be achieved not by inquiry, but by imagination." Here's a quote: "Solidarity is not discovered by reflection, but created." There's a lot in here. I've marked a few important words or phrases. Like I said, in a normal classroom, I would just say, hey, what do you notice here that's important or interesting? But not for today. And the first thing I say is the utopian view. Rorty is not saying we can do this tomorrow. Rorty is not saying that, this is the immediate goal. He's saying this is what we should aim for. Utopian in the first moment. And then he makes this distinction. There are 2 ways to get to solidarity. One is it's already there, just find it. The other one is try to make it somehow. And so the first question, of course, is what is solidarity? This important keyword, what is solidarity? And, the etymology, of course, is solidus, from Latin, meaning firm or whole or hanging together. It is a moment at which people realize that them together is more important than them alone. This is the ground of sacrifice. This is the ground of working together for goals bigger than oneself, and so on. So here's a question for the class. When has solidarity mattered? Can you think of certain moments in history or your own lives where that perspective of us hanging together is more important than the moment of of let me go at it alone and see what happens. Forever. Solidarity is the only thing that's ever mattered. You're not wrong. Particular moment, unionization, right? Definitely a lot of unionization movements, labor rights movements, labor movements in general are predicated on that idea that we individually can't engage in fair negotiation or challenges to the rest of society, to the bosses in particular. It's only when we say we share something in common, we're all electricians, we're all plumbers, that we're able to say, either you give us a fair life, you give us fewer hours, you give us more pay, you give us better working conditions, or all of us will step away, right? That's the kind of thing. Movements in general of any kind. Yeah, I mean, it's possible at any time you talk about movements at all, whether women's rights movements or environmental movements, that's a kind of solidarity. That said, I think there are ways in which social movements can actually ignore solidarity. Things like, what's your individual carbon footprints? Get out there and stop using bags and you'll save the world. I think that kind of environmentalist movement is one that actually does not use solidarity and actually breaks solidarity for reasons of maintaining the status quo. I believe there's evidence that the individual carbon footprint was actually a corporate movement to distract, which I think is absolutely terrible, of course. Popular revolutions, absolutely, Rolf. I considered putting here the picture of liberty leading to revolution. You know the picture, right, where the French banner is high and Lady Liberty, her breast exposed, as the mother of revolution and liberty, leads forward the French people. Right, this willingness to think of people as the French, as brothers, for example, might do that kind of thing. Yeah, you can point to lots of different moments here of coming together in a really important way, obviously matters a lot for any possible political movement at the very least, and there's a lot more to say here, of course, but yeah. He puts forward these two ideas, that solidarity can be discovered or created. Traditionally, we've wanted it to be discovered. Why do you think that is? Why would we want there to be solidarity that we can find out there, or a reason for solidarity we can find out there? What kind of things come to mind on that one? I have some ideas. See, this is the weird part of stream class. I know you're typing, but I can't see it. So I have this moment of, have I asked a good question? I can't see your little eyes lighting up, unfortunately. We don't have to take an effort to craft it. It's just there. We don't have to do the work to, very hard work of making it. We just need to go looking. Isn't that nice? It's already prepared. Just hunt for it. Absolutely. If externally you don't have to work for it, or I made a non-work thing, we can find a big pile of togetherness laying in the road. It's just a matter of hunting in the right place. Maybe it's underneath the bed. Let me look harder. Objectivity is so comforting. Yeah, Rory says elsewhere that it's amazingly good thing to believe that the big, powerful thing is always on your side. It's like having a dad to fight back against the bullies. The other thing to mention, of course, is if it's to be discovered, that means it's part of human nature. Right? It's the real thing out there. All these individualist moments pushing in different ways, those are the made up things. By nature, we really are connected. And so, what are some attempts that have been made to insist on solidarity's already out there? Or any come to mind? Like, not just we need to make solidarity, but instead, no, it's there. No problem, no problems. A few come to mind for me, but I'm curious what you come up with on that. Some of you are so funny. It's about getting away from the ideas of the present. Okay, so Ross, so it's a matter of not thinking of ourselves as just here, but of a broader perspective beyond that. I mean, there's a way of saying like, hey, we're all humans here, right? We were part of a great human family. Wherever the first humans came from, that's my grandma and grandpa and yours also. Definitely versions of this have been found in liberalism, right? All men are created equal. We can say that all day long, but how's that working out? Exactly. The Christian tradition, which talks about a universalism of all humans. We're all part of God's family. It's just a matter of discovering that we're all part of God's family, convincing people the thing that they already know. A certain Marxist framework does the same thing. Everyone who's part of the working class is being alienated and exploited in the exact same way. You just need to see yourself as part of the working class and you'll fight back. Now, obviously, it's the case that that has not worked out terribly well. So Rorty's pretty well convinced that all of the attempts so far to find the thing that will show everyone that we're all part of one big group just isn't working. And those that have worked, he thinks, have led to absolute disaster historically. So in the case of we're all God's children, you can insert your own way in which people are tried to convince other people that they're God's children. It just seems not to be working out. The liberal story that says all people are created equal, I mean, it's very easy to point to historical problems there also. And even though we keep insisting on it over and over again in liberal society, it seems not to be going anywhere. So those are the limitations. You refuse it because it either doesn't work or it gives us a false sense of ourselves. That's Rorty's claim. And so instead he says we need to create solidarity, which is something who said is real work. What you do, he thinks, is build from a common experience. Not the structural claim, this is already a fact inside of you that we're all together, but instead help people to see the commonalities. His number one commonality is actually already mentioned in chat, is that everyone suffers. And this is an important fact. We all suffer. Can we have a solidaristic movement of we suffer in similar enough ways that we should try to limit some of that suffering? He thinks yes. Now, maybe not. Maybe that's not a good place to start. But that's something that we can build from. You experience suffering, I experience suffering. Can we put it together? But is the suffering similar enough? His claim is the particularity is what matters, actually. It's the ability to recognize that my suffering and your suffering are similar enough, though not identical. Hard to say. Other possibilities. You can get the Marxist story back up and going by talking about it, right? It's not the immediate moment that says, you are part of the working class, go ahead and revolt. It's instead saying, hey, my job sucks. The boss doesn't treat me like a person. He's getting paid this much, I'm getting paid that much? That seems not fair. How much do you get paid? Open conversations about work are the way in which you build up worker solidarity, by being honest about the conditions of work. Now, again, this is not the exact Marxist story about universal classes, but there's something that combines us there that we have to build instead. I think is what unionization has always actually done, and why Marx and unionization haven't fit together all that terribly well, at least not in the US. Beyond that, loneliness. This is one that my students, I think, feel so embarrassed to talk about. Though, of course, what's the antidote to loneliness? Talking, right? So if I can get any one student to be willing to begin that conversation, so many other students pop in with the exact same thing. And so we build a community of the lonely who are then willing to work on their loneliness, right? And another version that comes to mind for me is the willingness to talk about mental illness, right? There's something broken and wrong inside of me. I am fundamentally a problem here. Oh wait, you have trouble also? Suddenly this moment of solidarity, maybe approaching mental health illness issues in ways other than I just need to work harder and be a better person, etc., is a way of building this solidarity. Now, Rorty thinks this can happen in ways other than one-on-one conversation. He thinks one of the most important things that he ever did for himself was read narratives about the various wars in the Balkans, various letters and diaries from people who were suffering in war, not soldiers necessarily, but civilians on the side, and say, wow, they have lived a life of suffering that is so much more suffering than mine, but I can see myself in their experiences, and hopefully, reciprocally, they could see themselves in my experiences also. Now again, suffering is not the only way to get there. It is seeking solidarity in small groups, large groups, or universal solidarity. Rorty wants to start from where you are. He's much more interested in community-based solidarity than getting all humans cry out together in one voice. He thinks that it's a bottom-up instead of top-down solidarity, right? If you insist with the Christians that all men are brothers, or with liberals that all men are created equal, that's top-down. Right? This big idea, everyone should see their part of that, and if you don't, oh, you missed out on something, this discovered fact. Instead, you create it gradually building up. This is probably the cute phrase of all politics is local, all solidarity is local also. Now, can you learn from people who are far away? Absolutely. But can community be built internationally all at once? Probably not, probably not. Anyway, what do we gain from this perspective? Well, one thing we gain is a lot of work, right? And Rorty died in, 2007 or so. And so, yeah, he didn't really have a sense of online culture. There are probably ways to talk about what we do here as being, what we do here as being really important also for community building. But I describe Rorty as a syndicalist? Absolutely not. He's an old school socialist who accepts liberalism as the best we can do. But no, his ideas can be adapted that way. I don't know of anyone who's doing that, but yeah, he himself was a socialist who delighted himself by drinking at parties and singing old Union songs about how red the flag is. So, but yeah, I think it's really adapting this to the online environment also. We gain the other, exactly right. We're no longer looking for this abstract ideal to hold us underneath and say, oh, we're all this thing. But instead, we find actual other people, who we see ourselves in, and they see themselves in us, and hopefully we can unite over that. Now, there is a reading of Rorty that goes the other direction and says he just wants to make everyone into himself. He wants to say everyone suffers like me, everyone's work is terrible like me, everyone's just like me. It's profoundly egoistic reading. I never met the man, and so my work takes him this direction here. My professors who have met the man are much less sanguine in interpretation, believing he was fairly selfish in his own views. But you should never meet your heroes. You should instead do what you can to take the ideas out of them that seem valuable and go along. So, contraption, I hope that helps a little bit in understanding what Rorty is doing with that section. That's how I interpret it, at least, as someone who's read a tremendous amount of Rorty and never wants to again. There's a reason the channel's called Resorty, and it's about that. Alright. In conclusion, hopefully the themes that have come through our conversation today go this way. Number one, we gotta be open to people on their ideas, partially so we can learn more about ourselves, but also so we're able to more fully understand how to build worthy communities of fellow feeling that might lead to something like progress or benefit or otherwise. Number two, we should recognize that we as humans can do things. We can understand our world, we can make connections, we can do a lot of amazing things ourselves, but we can't do it all. With Rorty and with Nietzsche, I'm comfortable saying we will never have one set of answers that explains everything in a way that convinces everyone, right? I think that is a fool's enterprise to have the top line yeah, the top line premise that leads to an absolute conclusion for one and all, which say I'm kind of at odds with some portions of philosophy, unfortunately. So we can do some amazing things, but don't get too big for your britches. Number 3, I believe strongly in the continuity of all things. I think the attempt to break off anything from its broader context is to miss out on what it really is. And I think Olmsted view takes very seriously both the Darwinian point about continuity and the Hegelian one also. Look, I referenced Hegel. We'll do Hegel some other stream, I promise. And lastly, and I think this is kind of Rory's big point, and a point that you've heard me mention previously, we tend to think of philosophy as being a purely rational affair. You know, find the view that can take on all comers, that shields you from any real critique, and go out there and convince everybody. Part of that, though, is imagining what else you could believe. Part of imagining what else one could get up to in the world, and then imagining how to show that to other people as opposed to purely hector them into it. And yeah, that's what I got today. There you go. That's 2 hours of blathering on about some philosophy. Let's see what's in the queue of things you want me to think about. What else is here right now? Oh, do I have philosophical questions that still bother me as a philosopher? Yeah. I often ask my students, you think back 100 years, it's very easy to think of ways in which humans were terrible. Right, 100 years ago, we didn't believe in equality of races or whatever. 500 years ago, we're enslaving everybody, etc., etc. When I ask myself and ask my students, what do you think in 100 years our children and grandchildren will say about us? So things come to mind pretty quickly about the way we treat other people, about the way we treat animals especially, and I worry. I worry a tremendous amount about that, and it makes me want to be better and do better, because I know that even the time when slavery was normalized, there were abolitionists. Even before there was an abolitionist movement per se, some people felt very uncomfortable with the institution of slavery. So shouldn't I be more uncomfortable with the things that I'm quite comfortable with, and what can I do about it? I don't know, but I should probably try to be doing something about it. The idea that scares me most is one that was mentioned earlier today. It's an idea called fideism. It's the belief that certain truths can only be known if you believe other things already. The area this is most problematic in for my purposes is if it's the case that you can only know true things about religion if you already believe in religion through faith. I've got real problems, absolute real problems, because I don't know how to make that first step anymore. So if it's true that there are certain things that you can know the truth of only by believing in other things already, that's a problem for me, and I'm willing to bite the bullet on that one, so called that perhaps I'm absolutely wrong about things in ways I can't fully say. I don't know. Other than that, as years have gone by, I've kind of gotten comfortable with the beliefs I have, and I still grow and I learn and I change a little bit. What's it called? Fideism. Fideism. It's like semper fideles, so it's faith. There you go. Yeah, past that, I'm pretty comfortable with the beliefs I have. There's certainly some things I've not thought through in a very long time. If some real philosopher came by and started hammering me on questions of metaphysics, I kind of shrug these days. When I was a youngster, I was really concerned about how do we know the real, and what exactly is the real, right? Is it a physical thing? Is it an ideal thing? Is it permanent? Is it always changing? Right? These various Greek questions in some ways that have stuck with us. And now I have a much harder time getting excited about those. With William James and the other pragmatists, I want to talk about the cash value of our beliefs. Right? If tomorrow we come to believe that I don't know, everything is purely ideal or everything is purely physical, what changes? Not terribly much. Not terribly much. We still engage in the world in the way we have thus far. The pragmas are pretty big in the way of, and by your fruits we shall know you. It's kind of Christian conception of how do ideas have value. So I don't know. Anyway, I think that's enough for me today. If there are any topics you want me to take up, if you want to have a stream about topic X, send me a message. If you want to see this again in the future, mention that somewhere. I had a fun time, but I want to make sure it was valuable for you folks too. So thank you for spending time with me. Maybe next time we can do an ethics stream. Great lecture, Professor. I killed it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. See you later, folks. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.